moment the plane jolted, he felt the weight on his shoulder, and everything in his careful, quiet life tilted with it. A stranger's head rested there, warm and unguarded, her breath steady as if she trusted him with something precious. He didn't know her name. He didn't know that in 40,000 feet of recycled air and unspoken rules, this small accident would crack open two guarded hearts and change the course of both their lives before the wheels ever touched the ground. He had taken the middle seat because it was cheaper and because habits are hard to break when you've spent years counting every coin. His carry-on fit under the seat like it always did, and the photo tucked into his wallet, his daughter grinning with missing teeth, felt heavier than usual. Across the aisle, a woman boarded last, phone pressed to her ear, voice calm and clipped as she ended a call with the kind of confidence that filled space. She slipped into the window seat beside him with a polite nod, eyes tired but alert, the look of someone who carried entire rooms on her shoulders. When the doors closed and the engines hummed, he folded himself smaller, a reflex learned from long days of not wanting to inconvenience anyone. The turbulence came without warning, a shiver through metal and bone. He braced, the way single parents learn to brace for everything, and that's when she leaned, just for a second at first, then fully, her head settling against him as sleep claimed her. He froze. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew the cost of a moment like this if it was misunderstood. He stared straight ahead, heart pounding, shoulder stiff, thinking of his daughter's bedtime stories and the promise he'd made to always do the right thing even when no one was watching. Minutes stretched. Her breathing slowed. The cabin lights dimmed. Around them, strangers slipped into their own private worlds. He felt the faint warmth through fabric, the human reminder that everyone gets tired, even those who seem unshakable. He didn't move. He didn't wake her. He simply stayed still, offering the quiet kindness of presence without expectation. When she stirred, it was gradual, like dawn. Her eyes opened, unfocused at first, then widening as she realized where she was. She jerked upright, cheeks flushing. Apologies tumbled out, rushed and sincere. He smiled, small, reassuring, and waved it off. Long flight, he said. Happens. She studied him then, really looked, as if searching for a hint of judgment and finding none. Something in her shoulders eased. They talked after that, softly, the way people do when the world is hushed. He told her about his daughter, about school lunches packed before sunrise and bedtime stories read twice because one time was never enough. She listened, the phone forgotten in her lap. She spoke about work in careful strokes, about responsibility and the constant hum of decisions that followed her everywhere, even into sleep. He didn't know she was a CEO. She didn't know how close he was to missing rent last month. In that narrow row of seats, titles lost their power. Another patch of turbulence shook the plane, sharper this time. The seatbelt sign chimed. A drink cart rattled. She grabbed the armrest, knuckles white. He felt the old instinct rise, the same one that steadied scraped knees and soothed nightmares, and he spoke calmly, grounding her with facts and gentle humor. She laughed despite herself, surprised by the sound. It felt like letting go of a breath she'd been holding for years. Mid-flight, a small crisis unfolded a few rows back. A child cried, panicked by the shaking. The cabin tensed. He unbuckled just long enough to help a flight attendant retrieve a dropped toy, returning it with a wink that quieted the tears. It was nothing heroic, just the practiced grace of someone who had learned that care is an action, not a headline. She watched him as if seeing a language she'd forgotten she knew. When the lights brightened and the captain announced smoother skies ahead, she turned to him with an expression that wasn't corporate polish or guarded charm. It was gratitude, plain and a little stunned. "Thank you," she said, and it carried more weight than the words suggested. He shrugged, embarrassed. "We all get through somehow." They exchanged names. The sound of hers sparked recognition in the air, the kind that usually arrives with whispered awe. He didn't react. Not because he didn't understand, but because it didn't matter to him in that moment. That realization hit her harder than turbulence ever could. She had spent years being seen as her role before her humanity. Sitting beside someone who saw the human first felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. As descent began, she hesitated, then asked a simple question that held 1,000 others inside it: "Would you like to keep in touch?" He thought of schedules and responsibilities, of a life built on reliability, and nodded. "I'd like that." After landing, they parted with a smile that lingered. Days later, a message arrived, not from an assistant, not from a corporate address, but from her directly. Coffee turned into conversation. Conversation turned into understanding. She learned the quiet heroism of his days, he learned the pressure behind her composure. Challenges surfaced, time, expectations, the fear of blending two very different worlds, but they faced them with the same patience that had carried them through a long flight. In time, she met his daughter, who declared her nice after 5 minutes and asked if she liked bedtime stories. He watched as the woman who commanded boardrooms knelt to listen, fully present, and felt something settle into place. They didn't rush. They built. They chose each other with intention. Years later, when people asked how it all began, she would smile and say it started with an accident at 30,000 feet. He would add that it wasn't the sleeping that mattered, it was the staying still. The lesson followed them forward. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer another person is a steady shoulder, and the courage to be kind when no one is keeping score.